The law is not just a set of rules, it's a living promise between a nation and its people, one that must constantly be defended, interpreted, and made more just. Lawyers, at their best, are not just professionals in the black robes. They are storytellers, architects of rights, and tireless keepers of that promise. Today, in celebration of the Pride Month, with Embryo, in collaboration with the Law Society of BPHC and Q, is honored to welcome one such force, Arundhati Katju.
She is a formidable lawyer who has fought complex criminal and human rights cases with clarity and conviction. Best known for leading the charge in the historic case that struck down Section 377, decriminalizing homosexuality in India, a moment that transformed the lives of millions and reaffirmed the Constitution's promise of equality. As a proud member of the LGBTQ community and a fearless advocate, she has redefined what courage looks like in a lawyer's robe. We are truly privileged to have her join us today. Let's welcome Arundhati Katju as she shares her journey and insights with us.
Hi, and thank you all for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here, especially during Pride Month. So, thank you very much.
So, can we start with the questions, ma'am?
Please, please. Thanks, Suhani, and thanks, Sejal.
So, according to the statistics, women make up half of the law grades, but only 15% of the India's legal workforce. Many leave mid-career, often due to societal pressures. Globally, there are 51% of lawyers, but hold just 32% of top roles. Do you think this is due to male dominance, or is law simply less rewarding for women?
You know, what I actually think is that historically, women have only been allowed to enter the legal profession about 100 years ago. Okay, so the rise that you're seeing is actually astronomical in that sense that our starting point has been very comparatively very recent. I was reading a book about law and theater and about how law used to be taught to law students, also including things like how it is a very theatrical profession, or there were aspects of how you project yourself, how you stand, how you use your voice, and so on. And it talks about how, for all these reasons, because it is a public profession, it is not suitable for women. So we're talking about something 2,000 years ago, 2,500 years ago, and from that point to today, and the kind of change you have, right? So I actually think that, if I look at my last 20 years in the profession, there's been a huge change. If I just look at litigation, the part of the profession that I'm in, we didn't see women senior advocates when I started practicing. There were hardly, there would be, when I was starting out as a fresher in the profession, there were lots of young women around my age. And then you would see attrition, right? People moving out of the profession. But I think even in the last 20 years, we've seen such a change. So I'm actually, as a person, I'm a very optimistic person. And about this also, I'm very optimistic. Like, I think the most important thing is your longevity in the profession, right? Just sticking it out. And of course, there are some points in a professional's life where you really have to make a decision and dig your heels in and say, I'm here and I'm not going to leave the profession. But I'm very optimistic simply looking at the change that I myself have seen in the last 20 years in terms of women entering different specializations, women practicing in every court in this country, being designated as seniors, an increase in the number of judges. If you look at the lower judiciary, there's so many more women entering at the higher judiciary as well. So we are seeing a huge change. And I think, some of it is going to depend on all of you. When you come into the profession, And when you start working, you are going to be faced with this question of, do you stick it out? And your answer is going to change the next 25, 30 years of the profession. So it's going to look like you, and it's going to be framed by your choices. Yeah.
That's very true, ma'am. The next question I would like to ask is the Supreme Court struck down Section 377 of the IPC. However, do you think that the legalization of homosexual relationships really met with acceptance? And how would you say that the Indian society has evolved since that historical judgment?
I think there has been a change. And I think part of the reason for that change is that people's expectations and how people live their lives has also changed. So societal acceptance in a way comes from, again, us, right? And how we live our lives, how we live our lives in society, uh, how our parents see us. People have kids. It was again something which was maybe unimaginable, 20, 25 years ago. Um, LGBTQ couples with kids. So I think things keep changing. The world keeps changing because we live in the world. This is something I very firmly believe. And I mean, college groups, right? A group like yours hosting an event during Pride Month. So I think, things things keep changing as long as we keep pushing for that change, right? As long as we believe that change is possible and we keep moving forward for that change. And of course, there are always setbacks in the life of a lawyer, especially. There are judgments you win and then there are losses, and you have to have faith that you can go back to the drawing board, you can go back to court, and you will win. And that's why equanimity is very important in a lawyer's life. So yes, to answer your question, I do think that society changes. I think that there is more acceptance, and I think that society also changes because we are part of it. So society is not something which is outside of us.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a great answer. So, like, my next question is like, not all battles are fought for victory. Some are fought simply to tell the world that someone was there on the battlefield. Going along these lines, would you say that for a lawyer, a case is about winning at all cost, or does it have a greater morale or at sometimes personal sentiments involved as well?
So I think it depends from case to case. Okay. You have to go in two cases knowing that you may lose, right? Because ultimately, our job as lawyers is to put our case forward, to argue the matter, to present the matter. But the decision making is not in our hands, right? That decision making is in a judge's hand. So when of course, litigation in some ways is a zero sum game. You come away with a loss or a victory, right? But whether it's in big, public interest cases or in cases involving individuals, which may or may not be rights cases, you and simply as a matter of litigation strategy, right? You have to have a bigger overall strategy in which an individual case, an individual judgment can be part of your overall view of the matter, right? So ultimately, when as lawyers, when we are in court, we are officers of the court, right? And that's our primary role. Our first obligation is to the court, and then we have an obligation to our clients. So our obligation for honesty to the court, right? To present the matter fairly, to present the law to the best of our ability and understanding, and then our obligation to our clients. So in the course of that, you will win and you will lose, but the overall arch of a matter, the overall arc of justice, all of that continues.
That was a great answer, ma'am. I would like to know next, after graduating in 2005, you spent 11 years building your practice in India before pursuing your LLM at Columbia. What was the internal conversation that led you to pause a successful career and return to academia?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was much older than I think the average student when they go for an LLM. I think many people go for an LLM about 2, 3, maybe 4 years after practice. But I had finished 11 years and I had actually gone independent and I had been independent for 5 years when I went. But what I believe is that the firstly, as a lawyer, what do you bring to practice? It's your experience of the world, your understanding of the world, your ability to make an argument, your ability to think about an issue, about a bigger question. And for me, especially after practicing for that long, I really enjoyed the LLM because I got to read what I wanted. I got to think about different kinds of things, which, when you're reading for a case, raat ko brief aayi, and you prepare it overnight, and the next morning you are in court sometimes. So your reading is very focused and narrow. But when I went back for the LLM, one of the things I enjoyed the most was I just got to read. I read philosophy, I read Indian philosophy. It was a lovely time for me. So, sometimes when interns come to my office, they ask, what do you think I should do? And I think, thing is, during the years that you have in law school, you should just read as much as possible. Read as many judgments as you can. In fact, if you can get into I'm digressing a bit, but if you can get into the habit of regularly reading latest judgments, of your high courts and the Supreme Court. And then aside from that, to read as widely as possible, to read literature, to read literature of different countries, of different Indian languages, read non-fiction. It's really, and I think what I enjoyed the most about litigation, about going back to law school and doing the LLM was that opportunity to be a student again. So yeah, of course, it, does it detract to go at that age from your professional life? You built a roster of cases. Okay, you built a portfolio of work. I was running my own office. I had junior colleagues and so on. But I think, when you think about it, life as a professional lawyer, as a litigator, is very long. There's no retirement age. If I'm lucky, I will be working till I'm 75. So, or 70. If you look at senior lawyers who are appearing today. And usme se, if 1 or 2 years have gone to do something which I really enjoyed, which was really important for me, I don't think it's a loss. In fact, if anything, it augments your professional life simply for the experience that you then have. So I think, going back to studying anything which any subject which is close to your heart, after working for a few years, I think it's a great idea. And I did it, and I really, you can even see from the way I'm talking about it that I really enjoyed it. So it was a very, very good experience for me.
So, like, your time at Columbia Law School as a human rights fellow came at a crucial juncture in the Section 377 case. How did the international human rights framework influence your litigation strategy back in India?
So I will say that I don't think the international human rights framework necessarily influenced my litigation strategy. Okay. I was a human rights fellow, that's correct, at Columbia. And I did study some international human rights law while I was there. But one thing is, I do believe that, when we look at, and this is something which I'm very firmly an advocate of, that when we look at constitutional rights litigation in India, right, fundamental rights litigation in India, we have a rich jurisprudence of constitutional law and fundamental rights in this country, and that is our first port of call, right? And for me, in the way I think about constitutional law, when I think about fundamental rights, that is the Indian Constitution is the foundation for me. right? Everything else is another layer to how we understand the Indian Constitution, right? So that's something which is very important. But when I was a student again, because I was back in college after a long time. When I did law, I finished class 12, then I went straight away to law school. I did a 5-year program. I finished it and I started working. So, like I said in the earlier question, I think the biggest thing that it contributed for me, having done the LLM at that juncture, was that it gave me a lot of time. I drafted and filed the Section 377 petition just before I left for the masters, shortly before I left for the masters. So when I was drafting the Navtej Singh Johar petition, I was here in Delhi running my own practice. But I think what happened during that year when I went for the LLM, which was just after that filing, it gave me a lot of time to read and to think, and to read in a deep way that I didn't have time when I was practicing. So definitely that time just to think, to mull things over, to read about Indian politics, to read about the freedom struggle, the idea of citizenship in India. That definitely deepened my understanding of what this case was supposed to be about, and that fed into arguments. For sure.
Like, following up to this question only, I would like to ask, like, being a James Kent scholar and public interest honoree at Columbia while fighting a deeply Indian legal battle, did you feel torn between two legal worlds or did they complemented each other?
No, I don't think you feel torn between legal worlds. Okay. I think, as I said, the foundation is the Indian Constitution, right? The basic text for us, the basic value system, right? And our thinking about the world of law, thinking about the values of the Indian judicial system, the values of the Indian Supreme Court as a constitutional court, that foundation is laid by the Constitution, right? In a few ways. One, it is a constitution, and we have a legal culture that believes in changing the status quo norm of society. It is not a constitution that was adopted to maintain the status quo. Right? So that is one. And two, therefore, also we believe that, as a legal culture, that the court is an instrument. The court is an institution of constitutional governance that is meant to further that idea of Indian society that the Constitution embeds. Right? So when you come from this system and then you see different systems, right, and you see how constitutional law has developed in different jurisdictions, and especially if you do an LLM program that has students from all over the world, so they are coming with their understanding of their legal systems, it gives you something to mull over, right? It gives you different ways of thinking about constitutional law and litigation. And for me, at heart, I have always been a litigator. Courtroom litigation is my focus, and the other experiences that I've had have fed into that, but I've never substituted it. So this is what I think, that it's not a question of being torn between legal systems at all, but it is that, that exposure, just as when you come to college and you meet, when you are in school, fundamentally, I think for many of us, we are in school with children who are like us, right? Who live in the same area, who come from a similar sort of background. And when we come to college, we meet people who are from all over the country, who have come from different cultures and different traditions. And there's a whole exposure to different ways of life. And then the LLM is sort of like that when it comes to legal frameworks internationally. So definitely it enriches your understanding of the of how to practice law. But I never felt that I was torn between two cultures in any way.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The next question would be, given that the Supreme Court upheld the constitutionality of Section 377 in the 2013 Suresh Koushal
Yeah.
versus Nas Foundation judgment, what were the key legal strategic challenges you faced in preparing a fresh constitutional challenge to this colonial era law?
Yeah, I think, I've spoken about some of this before. I think one, so in 2013, I had been out of college for about 8 years. Okay, I had set up my own practice. I was independent at that time. I was running my own office, my own chambers. And one thing is that for me it was like my workplace, right? It was the court where we worked and where we went to court every day. We went to court the day before the judgment came out, we went to court the day of the judgment, we went to court the next day. So it is definitely a blow as a citizen. It was a blow as a lawyer, um, and it was a personal blow. But I think the learning from that for me as a professional has been that you have to have the strength and the belief that you will go back to court. You have to have optimism. And I think it actually made me a very optimistic person, because when we went back, I mean, it was very challenging to find people who would act as petitioners at that time, because it was still a criminal law. The first 5 petitioners who came to court and the others, because they put their names to it, and they said that they were gay and therefore there was a possibility of prosecution and so on. It took a lot of strength from them. But I think what it taught me, therefore, was that you have to know, when you have lost a case, you have to be able to think, okay, well, what can I do differently? And then believe that you can go back to the same forum and try a different strategy and that it can work this time. And I think that belief also comes from a belief in constitutional values. For us, these values are not in the air. They are actually values around which we have decided to build our society post independence. And you will face that situation multiple times in your life, but you have to have that fortitude to keep going back.
So my next question is like your representation of former Air Chief Marshal SP Tyagi in the Augusta Westland corruption case represent a completely different facet of your practice. How do you reconcile defending individuals in corruption cases with your public interest work?
So again, I don't think there's any reconciliation. Right? I don't think there's any reconciliation. I am a lawyer. I have a general litigation practice. Part of that is a criminal defense practice. I do corruption cases. I do murder cases. I do offenses against the body. I do writs. I do commercial law. I do criminal law. I do property law. I mean, I do insurance cases. I do all kinds of litigation work, right? And I do believe, and I was a legal aid lawyer on the panel of the Delhi High Court Legal Services Committee for 6 years, right? 3 years before I did the LLM and 3 years till just before my designation as a senior. But I do, I represent legal aid clients and I represent private clients in criminal work. So the thing is that the basic justification for having a criminal defense system, or the basic, every client, every accused in that system is entitled to a defense, right? And is entitled to a full defense, because the entire might of the state comes against and accused in a criminal matter. Right? So I don't see anything to reconcile here. Okay. I am a litigator. I do a band of public interest cases, pro bono cases, legal aid cases, and I have a private practice which has all kinds of litigation work for all kinds of cases. And I think it's very important that everyone has a representation, everyone has access to quality representation. But also, I'm a lawyer because I enjoy being a lawyer. I love being a litigator. I love getting up on my legs and arguing matters in court. I love reading the law. And I love, sitting down and taking a case which is like a puzzle and unlocking the puzzle, or putting together a Rubik's cube. So actual Rubik's cubes I'm very bad at, but that part of legal practice which is like fitting it together, figuring out the puzzle and then going there. And there is a part of litigation which is about public speaking, about presentation, about addressing the bench and tempering your presentation, which I enjoy very much. So I like all parts of being a litigator, and now for the last 6 months or so being a counsel. And I don't see anything at odds in the different types of cases that I do.
Thank you so much, ma'am. My next question to you is, India's rape laws currently recognize only women as victims. What alternative legal provisions currently exist to address sexual violence against men and transgender individuals? And in your opinion, how close are we to having rape against other genders criminalized too?
So, as far as men are concerned, the shift in removing 377 from the BNS was to exclude the possibility of sexual assault against men. So if you look overall at the structure of the law, if till a child is 18, right, there is protection against sexual assault for boys, right? And then 18 onwards, we have no protection for men. And I think also I think also transgender persons are excluded under the BNS now. So there we have a real issue, right? Because you need to have protections against sexual assault. So if you're looking at it as a litigator, there are ways of doing it. You can look at grievous hurt provisions. You can look at provisions for all those provisions which deal with bodily injury. But in as much as we recognize sexual assault as a particular type of assault, right, we ought to also recognize situations where adult men can be victims or survivors of sexual assault.
Thank you, ma'am. That was a great answer. While many private companies express solidarity during Pride Month, legal protections for LGBTQ plus individuals in the workplace remain uncertain. In your view, what legal reforms are most urgently needed to ensure true equality in professional spaces?
So I think the thing is that in general, right, we have protections for the workspace, right? We have, for example, the protection of women from the sexual assault, the posh laws, right? We have labor laws. We have many kinds of socioeconomic protections in terms of EPF, GPF, pensions, that sort of thing, right? Now, when you look at, say, LGBTQ persons, what you really need is an expansion of these protections to LGBTQ persons. What I'm saying is that the overall framework, if you see it, is substantial. Whether or not it's enough in terms of labor law protections is a different matter. What I'm saying is that that umbrella of law is there. What needs to be done is to expand the umbrella to cover more persons within it. And definitely, whether it is organizations, and I don't think it's just about, organizations paying lip service during Pride Month or otherwise. I think it is a shift in the overall culture, right? For employees to feel that there is or colleges, school, whatever, to feel that there is at least a space, right? And then how you occupy that space, how much you use that space, is something which depends on you. I mean, just like the fact that we are having this talk today, right? So I won't say that there's a need for X or Y or Z. What I do think at a minimum is that there's a need for the overall legal architecture to be extended to LGBTQ persons.
That was a very insightful answer, ma'am. Now we are done with our questions. Now we would like to open the stage to the audience questions. If anyone in the audience wishes to ask the questions, kindly raise your hand to ask your question. Thank you, ma'am.
To everyone who would like to ask a question, please raise your hands and then we will allow you to switch on your camera and unmute to ask the questions. All right?
And maybe we can take a few questions and then answer. Yeah? We'll take a few questions and then answer.
Yeah, ma'am. So a kind request to anyone who's asking the questions, please put them in the chat box as well, so ma'am can refer to them while answering.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, ma'am. We'll start with Vidyesh. You can unmute and ask your question. And please switch on your camera as well so ma'am can see you.
Yes, please switch on your camera, because otherwise it's like talking to a black hole. So, Vidyesh.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, Vidyesh, you are audible but not visible.
Oh, am I visible now? I should
No.
be visible.
But go ahead, please ask your question. But I will also request. I would love to see all of you as well as to hear from you. So please go ahead. Hi, Vidyesh. Yes, now you are visible and audible.
Yes, ma'am. There's one question that I wanted to ask. Constitutional morality has become a powerful judiciary tool for promoting equality and challenges prejudice. How do you think we can integrate this constitutional morality into our everyday social interactions to better promote and protect the rights enshrined in our constitution? Like, it is a very important concept which has been used several times in many cases. But
that's a good question. Okay. What are the other? Let's have a few questions.
Yeah, so Arya, you can now ask your question. And Vidyesh, just put your question in the chat box as well. That will be helpful.
Thank you.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Arya, hi. Okay, I'm sorry. I have a question, which is where do I see the chat box? Okay, great. Thank you. Yes, Arya.
Good evening, ma'am. So my question for you is, given the ongoing discussions around the implementation of a uniform civil code, UCC in India, what is your perspective on how such a code might impact queer families, particularly in terms of marriage, inheritance, adoption, and recognition of non-traditional family structures?
Yeah.
The next question would be by Akhand Pratap and then followed by Koushal.
And please do put your messages in the chat box, because I can't see any messages in the chat box right now, and it will be very helpful to me just to keep track.
Hello, ma'am. So my question is regarding the NGOs that you have worked with in the recent times. I was just reading about them. So there's this one NGO that you have written for, which is Hindus for Human Rights, which is a US based US registered non-profit NGO basically. So the thing is that it is mostly being funded by Ford Foundation, which has also been allegedly been said by the MHA that it has been involved in trying to stop the development in India.
Okay. I've not worked with any NGO or written for any NGO, so I think that's sorry.
I was
What's
just
your
reading
next question? What's the next? I've not written for any NGO. Please, who's next in the queue?
Kush Bhaiya, you can go next, followed by Vedant.
Hello. Good evening, ma'am. Am I visible? Am I audible?
Yes.
Right. Ma'am, so the scrapping of Article 377 has also had a consequence where now there is no separate provision to convict anyone for sexual assault of animals. Just to clarify, I'm completely in favor of the decriminalization of homosexuality. It's just this one unintended consequence that I am concerned about. So, do you think that this act should be given a punishment, not just
There
because
is law. Yes, all right. Let's just take a few more questions. Understood. Okay. What's the next? We'll take 2 more questions and then I'll do some answers.
Vedant, you can go next.
Yes, ma'am. This is not more for queries, more about your experience. Having worked in the United States and India and both its federal court systems, one is dual, one is a whole just one system. What do you think is like the major difference you saw as a practicing lawyer with both the systems?
Okay, one more and then
Nidhi, you can ask your question.
Hi, Arundhati ma'am.
Hi.
I'd like to start by saying how much I admire your work, particularly around the Section 377 case.
Thank you.
I remember following it closely with a friend. As a student from the community, I often feel frustrated by how slowly legal victories seem to translate into real changes in our lives. Given this, how do you stay hopeful when progress feels so slow? And for someone like me who isn't in law, but still cares really deeply about these issues, what are some ways I could contribute to the cause?
Wait, someone like you who isn't?
Who isn't in law?
Oh, what are you studying, Nidhi?
Engineering.
Okay, so are you all law students here, or what is the? You're not. None of you are law students. So
No, ma'am, we are from an engineering college.
I am so impressed then by your questions. Firstly, let me say that I'm very impressed. Okay, so I think Nidhi, that's a great question, and so let me say a few things. All right, one is, I think. Let me start with this idea of constitutional morality and how do we incorporate constitutional morality into everyday social interaction. Okay, I think that's like a really wonderful question. Okay, because this is a question that, and I think whoever asked this question should, all of you who asked these questions should still have your cameras on because I have my camera on. So you should, I should see you while I'm answering also. But see, the thing is, I think this is really the key to the question, which is when we adopt a system of values, then those values are not compartmentalized into one part of our lives and then not another. It is actually about a value system for how we live our life as individuals and then as a country. Okay. So when you say values of equality, dignity, thank you all for your cameras being on. So when you say values of equality, dignity, fraternity, it's also a question of how we treat each other, how we treat people who are not like us. When you go out, and you will have all kinds of jobs amongst all of you. You will be working in India, some of you will work abroad, you will face different kinds of challenges in your life. And then the question is going to be, how do you stick to your own value system, right? And especially in how we treat others. So I don't think I have a answer for you in terms of do you do this X, Y, or Z, but I do believe this very strongly that, you know, the first recipient of my language is me, right? The first recipient of my values is me, right? And I guess, Nidhi, that also in a way answers your question, which is, how do you stay hopeful? It's because the first beneficiary of all my hope is me, right? So I think the thing is that one, you know, how old are you? May I ask?
I'm 18.
Okay, so I'm more than double your age. All right. And I don't see this change as having come slowly, right? Like, I see the changes that have happened in my own lifetime, right? So all of you are engineering students, right? Let me tell you a story about my mother, right? My mother was in BITS. My mother was in BHU IT. Okay, so it was BHU IT at that time. In 1970, sometime around 76, 77. Okay, back in what to all of you must seem like the dark ages. But she was the only girl in her engineering class. Okay. And my mother got into IIT Madras. She studied maths at a time when, my mother is from Agra, when maths was not taught in her girls' school. So my Nana taught her mathematics. She was a state topper in mathematics. And she got into IIT Madras. She didn't go at that time because it was very far. And she went to BHU. And then she went to IIT Kanpur. Okay. So my mom, there was recently IIT's or BHU's college magazine had an article about hostel life in that time. Okay. So Mama and I sat down and she was recalling her own experience. Okay, this is my mother's experience of being an engineering student, of being the only girl. Okay. So that is a change, the change which she sees when she sees all of you. How many girls are there now, Nidhi? What is your specialization? What are you studying at BITS?
Electronics and communications.
Okay, and how big is your batch and how many women are you in your batch?
I would say, I mean, it's far better than most colleges I've seen.
Okay,
but I would say that it's like 30%, maybe less than 30%.
So think about my mother seeing that change in her lifetime. Okay, so when you think about change, okay, when you think about societal change, you have to have you have to give yourself time. All right, you have to give yourself time to make change. If you think that I'm going to start doing this and in a year nothing substantial changed, it's easy to get disheartened. But the moment you have a longer view, okay, if you see 377, the first judgment, the first case gets filed in 98. Okay, Johar comes in 2019. So there are activists and lawyers who have pursued this, right, much before I came into a litigation, and before I was when I was still in school. So I think I'm very hopeful because I know that things change. I mean, my mother insisted that I get a professional education. And I'm here today because of my parents, really. So I think the thing is to know that things change because we are here and we are not going anywhere, right? And we are living our lives the way we want to live our lives, right here. Okay. And so I think, what can you do as an engineering student, as a non-lawyer? I'm sure there are things you are already doing, right? Participating in this conversation is a thing that we are already doing, right? And you will find multiple opportunities in your day-to-day life, in your career, in your workplace, in your college, in your home, in your family, where you will have this question about what can I do and how do I take values, right? And how do I make those values real for myself and for other people who are with me in my day-to-day life? I can't give you a granular kind of answer. Okay, go and do this, go and do that, right? But I can tell you this, that potential is always there. We know it's there. And we know that how we treat others is also how we treat ourselves. So the thing is that I do think that, to remain hopeful, to remain optimistic, you have to give yourself a large time frame. Like, when I applied for this master's, one of the best questions that I was asked in the applications when I applied for the LLM was, where do you see yourself 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years from now? Okay, and I think actually it's a wonderful question because we rarely ask ourselves questions like that. And we ask ourselves, okay, where is my first job going to be? And that, everyone's kind of time frame is there. Well, what do I want to do by the time I finish my program so that I'm in X job? But the moment you start expanding your time frame, you are opening up different kinds of possibilities for yourself. So that is my very long answer to this question. To Kush, your question of provisions for protection of animals, I think there are many provisions of prevention of cruelty to animals. There are provisions generally for the upkeep of animals and so on. I think when it comes to law, generally, if you're looking for a certain kind of protection, you can usually find it there. In you find some of the other provisions which can come to your use. What were my experiences working in a different court system like the US federal courts, its counterpart in India? Let me say this. I think the best thing that happened to me, I don't think it's such a technical question of what there are differences in the legal systems and so on, and the work cultures and all of that. But I think for me, because I went for further studies after a very long time, and after having worked for 10, 11 years, being exposed to a different system at that time was really good for me. It sort of shook me up. I was very used to working in India. I knew how to work. I knew how to get, I knew what the Indians, just like, it was like when you come into first year and everything is a shock. And then by the time you are in your fourth year or so, you know what is required, you know how to manage things. So you've gotten used to college life, whatever it is. So I think for me, it was a bit of a shock again like that. And that was really good for me. It was very good to see a new work environment, a new work culture, a new court system. It made me think differently about things that I was doing. Okay. Now we still have some time. We still have another 10 minutes or so. So do we have others who are asking questions?
Of course, if anyone else has any questions to ask, they can raise their hands and then we can proceed. All right, Shrikant, you may switch on your camera and ask the question that you want to.
Hello, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are, but you are not visible.
I can't turn on my camera.
It's not a problem. Go ahead.
I have a kind of general question on legal objectivity. So, do you believe that law is inherently neutral, or is it always shaped by, like the biases and blind spots of the people who are interpreting it? And if it is the latter, then how do we ensure that justice isn't just legal but also humane?
Okay. Then we'll take 2 or 3 questions. Yeah, Sanjay. Oh, there's a queue. Sorry.
Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Ma'am, I wanted to ask you, if large parts of the society oppose the rights that the court is bringing up due to their religious beliefs, then can the law still drive change without, bringing
I
about
can't hear you.
backlash or...
There's a lot of background. Sorry, I can't hear. Maybe you can just
Is
put
it
your
better
question
now?
in the chat box. I'm not able to hear you clearly.
Sure, ma'am, sure.
Thank you. Who's next?
Yeah, Priyam, you can go ahead. Please try to switch on your camera if it's possible, ma'am.
But if it's not, it's all right. I mean,
Yeah, am I visible?
Not have been prepared for that. Yeah, hi.
Hello, ma'am. I wanted to ask that you later came out as a part of the LGBTQ community. So how did it impact you personally and professionally?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Okay. Do we want one or two more questions? Then.
Ma'am, it's completely up to you, ma'am. Like we can...
No, yes. I mean, I'm happy to take another one or two questions, and then we can, Then
Yeah,
I can.
so if anyone has a question, you can please speak up, ma'am. Will be happy to answer.
Okay,
All
I
right.
might also ask a question in that case.
All right.
I might also have a question, so I will answer these questions. Then I will also ask a question. So, okay, so let me answer both these questions because. Okay, all right. I'll answer Sanjay and Priyam's question, and then I'll come to yours. So, you know, here's the thing, right? When I came out, how did it impact me professionally and personally? It was very difficult. Okay, the initial phase was really tough. In fact, my father later wrote about it. He wrote an op-ed about his own experience when I came out, and it was very difficult initially because it was difficult for me, but I did have some support. But it was also very difficult for my parents, and they had no support. Okay, so by coming out, my parents also had to come out, and they didn't have any support when they were coming out. So I think they went through 2 or 3 very difficult years, and I also went through 2 or 3 very difficult years. So it wasn't easy personally. And then it got better. Okay, it got better, and it kept getting better. And full credit to my parents who really did. They did the work. And they made an effort, to change their thinking, and they did, and now they are wonderful, actually. So how did it impact me? So that's how it impacted me personally, I would say. Professionally, I think the thing is that you have to stay the course, right? And this is true for any kind of professional challenge that you take up or decision that you make, that you are going to live your life on your own terms. Okay, at any stage of your life. And I think you have to be financially independent. Having a job and security is very important. And knowing that, doing something that you really love. I think that also helps because, I love being a lawyer. I have never regretted it for a day being a litigator. And I think that also really helped me because fundamentally what I did, I really enjoyed. So of course, coming out It's not some la-di-da-di-da decision that you make or thing that happens. It is a complicated period for anyone. And I was very lucky in many ways. But so this comes also to the second question, which is, if large parts of society oppose LGBTQ rights because of religious beliefs, can the law still drive change? So I think, there are many questions here, right? One is, are rights opposed to religion, or do they go hand in hand with religion? And then can we all still live together, even if we have differing beliefs, right? Does our constitution, does Baba Sahib's constitution give us this way of understanding each other, of living with each other, of talking to each other, where we can find a common ground, even if our beliefs don't coincide, right? And so, do I believe the law is inherently neutral? I mean, let me turn this question to all of you. Do you believe that science and technology are inherently neutral? Or have they also been framed by by ways of thinking, by cultural forces? And are they shaped by the biases of the person who sees the data, who interprets the data, who asks the questions? And so, how do we ensure a just society? I mean, I think this is as much a question for all of you as it is to me as a lawyer. Because, you all are also involved in the making of this society. And, if I think of the biggest change that we have on the anvil as lawyers that I'm trying to understand, it's AI. It is changing the way we work. It is changing the way we think. It is changing the questions that we ask and the answers that we get and the way we think about information. Definitely, I can say that, I'm 20 years in as a lawyer. For my young colleagues who are starting work today, AI is framing the way they practice law, right? So I think it's a big question for all of you, which is, how do you think that the questions which you are going to be asking, are those questions going to be informed by constitutional morality? And what are the paths that you all are going to be on when you come to my age and your hair is white like mine? What are the questions which you all will have been asking? So yeah, Shrikant, that's my answer to you.
Okay, ma'am.
Do we have one last question, or any one last question, then we can close? Yeah, Vaishnavi.
Hello. So, looking ahead, what trajectory do you anticipate for marriage equality, adoption rights, and gender identity legislation in India? Which areas do you expect to see progress first?
At this point, honestly, I don't have let me put it like this. I think there are things which are happening, right? Like the government was supposed to set up a committee. It has done that. There have been consultations and so on. So what is going to happen in terms of like X is going to happen and Y is going to happen and Z is going to happen? I can't say it in a kind of crystal ball sort of way. But what I can say is that, what is going to happen is going to be based on what you all want for your own lives. And that's the key. Like when I look at when I look at young people today, right? And if you ask yourselves, what do you want for your own life? Right? What kind of life do you want to be able to live? And where do you want to be able to live that life? So if you have an aspiration to live a full life, here in this country, in this community, then you have to ask yourself that, right? I mean, that I think that's the question, actually. When this question is asked, right, what is the future of LGBTQ rights in India? I don't think I'm the one who has that answer. I think you all are the ones who need to be thinking about that answer, because you are you are going to be 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years down the line answering that question. And so it's your imagination of that answer today that is going to be the answer in the future in different time frames. So thank you all for having me here today. I really enjoyed the Q&A session very much. And this has really been wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care and all the best to all of you. Really, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, ma'am.